Son of Saul is a 2015 film directed by Laszlo Nemes. Saul is a prisoner in Auschwitz, the infamous Nazi concentration camp. He discovers a young boy has died and convinces the doctor to allow him to take the body. Saul searches all over the camp for a rabbi who will perform the Kaddish and help give the boy a proper burial. Saul tells others that the boy is his son, but nobody he tells is convinced of this. Saul and a few others escape from the camp. They are eventually discovered, and the gunshots that ring out suggests that nobody survives. The Holocaust differs from other historical genocides, Rwanda, Cambodia, Armenia, because a genocide is generally confined to a particular country or region. Armenians living elsewhere on the continent could potentially be safe, but the Holocaust was a plan to target and eliminate Jews all over the world, first in Europe and then elsewhere as Nazi Germany planned its expansion. This means that while the plan was enacted by Nazi Germany, many nearby countries have their own histories. Saul is a Hungarian Jew led by Germans to occupied Poland. We picture the millions of Jews and others killed exclusively in these camps, but in reality many were simply killed outright where they lived, which makes the total number killed in the genocide difficult to calculate. The loss of humanity numbers in the millions, but the loss of our humanity cannot be measured. Throughout the film, Saul searches for a rabbi to perform the Kaddish. The film does not explicitly tell us what this means, assuming the audience will know the Kaddish is either ubiquitous enough to understand the basics or ascertain in context that it is a prayer for the dead. In actuality, the Kaddish is a kind of hymn of praise, and the burial Kaddish is a version for this specific purpose. When the followers of the Jewish faith say that they are saying Kaddish, it often refers to burial rites. When Saul finds someone who he believes knows the Kaddish, he begins to bury the boy, but the man is revealed to be a fraud. He does not know the Kaddish save for the first line or two. Over the course of the film, Saul is subjugated because he is a Jew. The Nazis mock his religion, his culture. They dance around him singing a false version of a song and nearly force him to dance to it too, before tiring of the scene. So when Saul races back and forth across the concentration camp, attempting to find someone who will help bury the boy and perform the Kaddish, we can begin to understand why. His faith has been used against him. The Nazis have challenged and mocked his culture. In burying the boy properly and reciting the Kaddish, Saul will be preserving his faith. The purpose of the Kaddish is not simply to mourn the dead, but to praise God in spite of their loss. To tell God that the Jewish people still believe and remain faithful, even in the face of death. Part of the Kaddish is the response, "May his great name be blessed forever and to all eternity." The Holocaust is often called Shoah among Jews. This is because Holocaust comes from a Greek translation, holocauston, of a Hebrew word meaning a burnt offering to God. Obviously, Jews might find the association of the word offensive, and so the alternate version, Shoah, is sometimes used. Shoah translates in English as calamity or catastrophe, not sacrifice. Michael Berenbaum, director of the Siggy Ziering Center for the Study of the Holocaust and Ethics at the American Jewish University, once said, "I wouldn't want to know the God who sacrificed these people." Coming to terms with the Shoah from the perspective of faith can be challenging. Not since the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 AD by the Romans has the faith of the Jews been so tested. Philosophy among Jewish thinkers post-World War II followed a number of competing theories and paths, trying to discover why this happened from the perspective of their faith. Philosopher and educator Richard Rubinstein, in his book After Auschwitz, claimed that from the perspective of the Jewish faith and the history of the Jewish faith, there exists only two possibilities for why the Shoah occurred, either as a punishment or as a mystery. He argued that since he could not conceive of a God who, after choosing the Jews as his people and forming a covenant with them, allowed for the Shoah to occur, then the Jewish concept of God cannot exist. This concept of God, he argued, is dead. Jews could no longer claim that an omnipotent, omnibenevolent God works in favor of the Jewish people. Of this, he once wrote, "No people has less reason to believe in abstract moral principles, human virtue, or international institutions than do the Jews. The death of God as a cultural fact is real and all-embracing. The fact that the film, Son of Saul, revolves around finding someone for the Kaddish tells us a lot about what it is trying to convey in a grander sense. Saul is not merely searching for someone to say a few words, he is searching for faith, for hope. He is searching for what the Kaddish is about, understanding the loss in the Jewish community while still being God's chosen people. Saul would probably reject Rubinstein's assertion, or at least wish to reject the assertion, that the previous Jewish concept of God is now dead. Rubinstein pictured a couple scenarios and hypotheticals. If God were alive, Rubinstein argued, he would not have allowed the Shoah to occur. Or if God were alive and allowed the Shoah, then the covenant between God and the Jewish people had been broken. In either case, the Jewish concept of God, whether God ever existed or not, is dead. Jewish philosopher and theologian Arthur Cohen had a differing view. For Jews, suffering was part of their history, but this new suffering, the Shoah, was different and represented an altogether new challenge, a new version of evil with no moral to the story, a break from past events. Perhaps because of this, he also claimed God's role in this Shoah was and is ambiguous. God and the life of God exist neither in conjunction with or disjunction from the historical, but rather in continuous community and nexus. God is neither a function nor a cause of the historical, nor wholly other and indifferent to the historical. If we begin to see God less like an interferer when it accords with our needs, and more as an immensity whose reality is our preconfiguration, we shall have won a sense of God whom we may love and honor, but whom we no longer fear and from whom we no longer demand. Though this lack of intervention, this silence as Cohen once put it, may not be comforting to men like Saul, he attempts to alleviate the silence of God to make a rabbi speak. Throughout the film, Saul tries to have this boy buried. He tells others that the boy is his son, but others question the validity of this. The boy is probably not directly related to Saul, but his obfuscation is only a lie to others. To Saul, the boy is family because he is a Jew. He is family because he is suffering in the same way that he is. He is family because his true parents, whoever they are not there to bury him, not there to speak Kaddish. When the audience asks whether or not Saul is the boy's father, that is not the mystery of the film. Post-World War II Jewish theology may sound dire or perhaps just revolutionary, but not all Jewish philosophers and theologians believed in upending the faith or declaring the death of God. Abraham Joshua Heschel once said, "In a world where God is denied, violence applauded, in a world where God is left without allies, is it meaningful for man to court-martial him?" Heschel compared this questioning of God following a disaster to that of Job, who famously never received a satisfactory answer. Heschel believed these affronts to his God were gibberish, even if they were articulated well by others. This hope and this attempt to attach oneself to one's faith in the face of the Shoah is written into this film. The director himself has confirmed this. In an interview, he said that his movie shows hope. Not hope of survival, but the hope of the inner voice that might exist when everything, including God and religion, is gone. In the film, we don't see the classic movie arc or act structure or even familiar cinematography. There is a momentum to everything that differs from these structures. Classical storytelling inside Auschwitz does not work because there cannot be a happy ending. There can be no ending, really, just a series of endings, one death after another, and with the Nazis giving no special recognition or burial rites to the dead, and with the prisoners not able to mourn their losses. There can be no closure in a narrative. Not a narrative that is genuine anyway. Hannah Arendt, a Jewish political theorist who escaped Nazi Germany, famously wrote Eichmann in Jerusalem. Adolf Eichmann was one of the architects of the Holocaust, perhaps its chief bureaucrat. Trying to understand the Shoah outside of the religious point of view, Arendt famously called Eichmann's inability to think for himself, reliance on stock phrases and cliches, and strict adherence to conformity as the banality of evil. This phrase has since taken a life of its own, and we see this bureaucracy, this casual brutality, this machine-like evil, this banality in Son of Saul. Prisoners are forced to shovel ashes of people they once knew. Removing blood from the floor is mere janitorial work. a chore like washing the dishes. Prisoners are marked in the same way that documents are stamped. Everyone is inanimate. Arendt was not making the claim that the genocide was unremarkable because of this. Some have mistaken her words over the years. The way the action is shot in the film, according to the director, is meant to show the limitations of life there. The lack of information. Nobody could know or see very much, and the cinematography conveyed this. There is another benefit to this, though. The Holocaust seems so very far away, so distant, as if it happened in another world. Son of Saul, on the other hand, braces us to the action. It makes us watch everything up close. That way, it can never feel distant. It is happening right now in front of our eyes. Hi everyone, if you like what I do, please click on the orange Patreon link below. That's how this show happens. It's also the only way to request an episode. Also, there are other benefits to pledging, so check it out. The information is on my Patreon page. I'll see you next week.